Pregnant wife watched her billionaire marry the mistress, then dropped a bombshell in the church. Have you ever witnessed a betrayal so shocking that it changed your entire understanding of love, loyalty, and power? In a quiet, candlelit church in Manhattan, a pregnant wife stood in the back pews, watching her millionaire husband vow to spend forever with another woman. Heart pounding, tears burning her cheeks, she waited for the perfect moment to speak her truth. The congregation was spellbound by the bride's glittering gown and the groom's steely composure until the wife emerged from the shadows. What followed shattered the boundaries of polite society, exposing dark secrets, greed, and raw heartbreak in the most devastating way possible. The late August sun beat down on the manicured lawns of the prestigious Fairmont Country Club in upstate New York. Mary Johnson, soon to be Mary Thompson, sat on a wrought iron bench, her gaze drifting across the horizon as the golden light glinted off the polished windows of the clubhouse. Her wedding was scheduled for the following week, and her heart fluttered with the excitement she believed every bride was meant to feel. She fiddled with the engagement ring on her finger, a brilliant cut diamond that shimmered with each twist of her hand. It was a gift from Jack Thompson, the dashing, ambitious entrepreneur who had taken Manhattan's technology sector by storm. Jack Thompson was a name whispered across high society gatherings and business conferences alike. He had built his first company at 25, sold it at 28 for a small fortune, and now, at 32, he was known throughout New York City's investment circles as the millionaire with a Midas touch. Handsome, confident, and unrelentingly focused, Jack had a knack for drawing people in, especially women. Rumors of extramarital affairs floated around him like vaporous clouds of perfume, but Mary had always dismissed them. She chalked it up to malicious gossip, the stuff tabloids spun to fill their pages. But on that summer day, as she tried on her final wedding dress fitting, an uncomfortable sensation slithered through her mind. Their wedding was supposed to be the beginning of a fairy tale marriage, complete with a future lined in gold. Yet something about Jack's behavior in recent months gave her pause. His phone seemed to buzz constantly with messages from unknown contacts. Late-night business meetings extended into early morning returns, with vague explanations that never fully satisfied her curiosity. Although Mary always tried to trust Jack and respect his ambition, the seeds of doubt were beginning to sprout. Their engagement had been a whirlwind, lasting just under 9 months. Mary's family, the Johnsons, came from a modest background, but they had always valued integrity. Her father, Harold Johnson, was a retired librarian who instilled in Mary a love for literature and the importance of honesty. Her mother, Nancy, had worked as a kindergarten teacher for decades, drilling compassion and empathy into her children from an early age. When Mary introduced Jack to her parents, they had welcomed him politely but were wary of his polished charm. "Don't lose yourself to his world," her mother had warned, eyes troubled yet hopeful. "Money changes people, Mary, even the best of us." Mary had brushed off the caution, insisting Jack was different. She wanted so badly to believe in her fairy tale that she overlooked the subtle cracks forming in her relationship. Yet as the wedding day drew nearer, these small cracks became fissures. Jack, who used to text her sweet nothings throughout the day, now only sent short notes about rescheduled dinners or cancelled plans. His kisses, once fervent and warm, had turned mechanical, like obligatory gestures meant to maintain appearances. That day, as Mary stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite, wearing a gown made of delicate ivory lace, her best friend Charlotte Fletcher walked in. Charlotte's expression was concerned, as though she had just stepped out of a storm. In her hand was a folded newspaper, and her knuckles were white from gripping it too tight. "You might want to see this," Charlotte whispered. Mary took the paper, her heart in her throat. The society pages featured a photograph of Jack at a fundraising gala the previous night. On his arm was Victoria Snow, a rising fashion designer who had recently opened an exclusive boutique on Fifth Avenue. The headline read, "Powerful Duo. Tech mogul Jack Thompson and fashion icon Victoria Snow spotted getting cozy." The article's text was speculative, but the photo showed Jack and Victoria in close conversation, his hand resting on the small of her back. The flash of the camera had caught them in an intimate moment that looked, to Mary's horror, far too familiar. "That's just gossip," Mary tried to reason, her voice trembling. He was at a public event. People twist these things. Charlotte's eyes brimmed with sympathy. "Mary, I just want you to be careful." Throughout the fitting session, Mary tried to keep her composure, but fear and anger warred in her chest. Could this be just another rumor, or was it something more? When the day ended, and Mary found herself alone in the quiet sanctuary of her small apartment, she tried to call Jack. His phone rang 5 times, then went to voicemail. She tried again and again until she gave up, the pit in her stomach growing heavier with each unanswered ring. Staring at the photo in the newspaper, Mary felt a chill race down her spine. For the first time, she could not dismiss the pang of jealousy, the unsettling suspicion that her dream man was hiding a secret one that threatened to destroy her life before it even began. Little did Mary know that this was just the first step onto a path that would lead her into a labyrinth of lies, betrayal, and finally, a day in church that neither she nor anyone who witnessed it would ever forget. The next morning, Mary awakened to the incessant chirping of her phone notifications. The article had gone viral in select gossip columns, and acquaintances from her past people she barely remembered were messaging her to ask if she was okay. Her social media accounts were aflutter with congratulatory wedding messages alongside whispered speculation about Jack and Victoria. Anxiety made her hands shake. She felt as though she was standing on the edge of a great precipice about to fall. When Jack finally called back, his voice was calm, almost dismissive. "I was at a gala," he explained. "Victoria happened to be there. We talked about her new fashion line. That's it. Don't believe everything you read in those tabloids." His reassurance, however, did little to quell the unease Mary felt. She suggested cancelling the tabloids' coverage of their wedding, but Jack insisted they do no such thing. "Bad press is better than no press," he joked. But Mary couldn't even muster a polite laugh. The man she loved was slipping through her fingers, and she couldn't understand why. Days passed in a tense countdown to the wedding. Charlotte tried to comfort Mary, reminding her that pre-wedding jitters could feel overwhelming. Mary's mother spent hours on the phone from Florida, planning last-minute details and offering motherly reassurance. But Jack remained aloof, busy, and strangely absent during crucial decisions like the cake tasting and final guest list arrangements. Then came the real blow. 2 nights before the wedding, Mary discovered she was pregnant. Overwhelmed by a mixture of excitement and terror, she dialed Jack's number. This time, he picked up. When she told him the news, there was a long pause on the line, followed by a stilted sort of enthusiasm that felt completely contrived. That's wonderful news," he said, voice uneven. His response didn't sound like joy, nor did it sound like devastation. It was a hollow monotone, as though he were reading off a script of how a man was supposed to respond. Mary ended the call with tears brimming in her eyes, feeling more alone than ever. She curled up on her sofa, hugging a pillow to her chest as she stared at the ring on her finger. This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life, but it felt like she was living in someone else's nightmare. The wedding day arrived, bathed in crisp morning sunlight. Mary dressed in her bridal suite, heart pounding like a war drum. Tucking away her new secret knowledge of her pregnancy, she was determined to see Jack's face and believe everything could still work out. When the wedding march began to play, and she took that first step down the aisle, She caught a glimpse of Jack standing near the altar, tall and regal in his tuxedo. Her heart soared, a fragile glimmer of hope. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch at first. The officiant announced their names, Jack Thompson and Mary Johnson. Each recited meticulously planned vows, but as Jack spoke, Mary's stomach churned with the sense that his eyes were not entirely on her. A flicker in the back row caught her attention. A stunning woman with dark hair and high cheekbones sat quietly, her lips curving into a knowing smile. It was Victoria Snow. Mary fought the urge to tremble. She forced herself to focus on the officiant's words. When the ceremony ended and they were pronounced husband and wife, guests applauded. Mary kissed Jack, tasting the slight bitterness of dread on her lips. The reception was held in the luxurious ballroom of the Fairmont Country Club. White lilies adorned every table, and an 8-tier wedding cake towered in the corner. The band played a melodic jazz tune, while waiters glided around, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvre to a crowd of Manhattan's elite. Mary danced with her father, who tried to reassure her that all was right in the world. She tried to believe him, but that persistent knot of fear grew tighter with each passing moment. Hours later, when the festivities began to lull, Mary was pulled aside by Charlotte. In Charlotte's eyes, Mary saw the reflection of her own dread. "Mary, I saw Jack slip away," Charlotte said, glancing nervously around. "He left through the side door with Victoria. I don't know where they went." A chill spread through Mary. She scanned the crowd, her eyes darting over guests in glittering gowns and sleek tuxedos, but Jack and Victoria were nowhere to be found. Summoning what little courage she had, Mary slipped out of the ballroom and into the deserted corridor. She followed faint echoes of hushed voices until she reached a dimly lit balcony overlooking the golf course. There they stood, Jack and Victoria, silhouetted against the moonlight. Their conversation was heated. Victoria gestured wildly, and Jack's face was contorted with frustration. Mary strained to catch snippets of what was being said. "You said you would leave her," Victoria hissed, her voice trembling with rage or perhaps heartbreak. "You promised we'd be together." Jack whispered something Mary couldn't hear, but his tone carried the weight of desperation. Mary felt her heart lurch, the final puzzle pieces of suspicion snapping into place. Everything she had feared, every rumor she had brushed aside, was confirmed in that single heartbreaking moment. She couldn't stomach hearing more. Turning away, she hurried back to her suite, tears streaming down her face, her newlywed joy crushed under the undeniable truth. Her husband was in love with someone else, someone he may have promised a future even as he stood at the altar with Mary. In the days and weeks that followed her wedding, Mary found herself living in a state of uneasy tension. She and Jack were officially married, but he was as distant as ever. He spent most of his time at the Thompson Enterprises headquarters in Manhattan, claiming urgent business matters required his attention. Meanwhile, Mary felt trapped in their lavish penthouse, her pregnancy symptoms intensifying. Morning sickness, fatigue, and waves of emotion came and went like relentless tides. One evening, Mary's phone buzzed with an unknown number. On the other end, a soft, confident female voice spoke. "Mary, this is Victoria. We need to talk." Mary nearly dropped the phone. How had Victoria gotten her number? Why was she calling now? "Please, just meet me at the Plaza Hotel's lobby lounge tomorrow at noon," Victoria said before Mary could speak. "You deserve to know the truth." The next day, Mary found herself seated in the opulent lobby lounge of the Plaza. The grand chandelier overhead bathed the room in a warm golden glow, and well-dressed patrons sipped tea or champagne in plush chairs. Nervous energy thrummed through Mary's veins. She considered leaving multiple times, but some stubborn part of her insisted she stay, that this was an opportunity to finally learn the reality of her husband's secret life. Victoria arrived in a tailored navy dress, her hair swept into a sleek chignon. She radiated self-assured elegance, every step confident, her posture perfect. Taking a seat across from Mary, she ordered 2 glasses of sparkling water. For a moment, she eyed Mary with a blend of curiosity and pity. "You look pale," Victoria observed. "I assume you haven't been well." Mary swallowed hard, pressing a hand to her abdomen. Her body felt heavy, weighed down by fear and the child growing inside her. "Pregnant," she murmured, unsure why she shared such a personal detail with the woman who had been having an affair with her husband. Victoria's eyes widened, but her expression quickly morphed into something that looked like regret. She seemed genuinely taken aback, which confused Mary. Was it possible Jack hadn't told her? "I'm sorry," Victoria said, her voice hushed. "I had no idea." Mary felt a flash of anger. "You're sorry? You call me out of nowhere, expecting me to calmly chat about how you've been involved with my husband, and you say you didn't know I was pregnant. Why did you want to see me?" Victoria inhaled slowly, as though summoning the courage to speak. "Because Jack and I have been together for almost a year now. We met at a charity event in Montauk last summer. He told me he was only dating you for convenience and that he planned to break it off. When he proposed to you, he claimed it was part of a business strategy uniting with the Johnson name, or something about your father's connections. I believed him because I loved him. Then he told me he would leave you soon after the wedding." Mary's jaw clenched. She felt nauseous, but she forced herself to remain composed. "So he used me for a marriage of convenience?" Victoria hesitated. "That's what he said at first. But then he started talking about how he actually cared for you, and he was torn. And I was foolish enough to think he'd choose me in the end." Tears welled in Mary's eyes, a mixture of betrayal and heartbreak. She thought back to every sweet gesture Jack had shown her during their courtship, every quiet moment they had shared watching sunsets or discussing books she adored. Had it all been some elaborate performance? "I confronted him after the wedding," Victoria continued, her tone growing sharper. "He panicked, said he needed more time. But I realize now that Jack Thompson's word means nothing. He has no intention of losing the public image of a perfect marriage to you, nor does he want to give up his affair with me." Mary's heart hammered. She suddenly felt that she was staring down at a gaping chasm with no bridge across. Everything she believed about Jack, their love story, even their unborn child, was tainted by his duplicity. She couldn't stop the tears that spilled down her cheeks. Victoria handed her a handkerchief. "Listen," she said gently, "I'm not here to fight you or take Jack away anymore. I'm here to warn you. He has a plan to keep us both in the dark. He thrives on secrets and control. And if you think the paparazzi coverage of your wedding was intense, wait until his next business deal goes public. This is a man who will protect his empire at any cost." They sat in silence for a moment, the hush of the plaza's lounge providing a stark contrast to the storm raging inside Mary. She felt an odd swirl of emotions, anger toward Victoria, empathy for her, and a desperation to protect her child from Jack's manipulations. "Why are you telling me this?" Mary finally asked. Victoria's confident facade cracked, and she let out a trembling sigh. "Because I truly did love him once, and I was willing to do anything to be with him. But the man I fell for is a ghost. I see that now. He's ruthless. And honestly, part of me wanted to see if you were truly as naive as he made you out to be. But you're not. You're just another victim. Maybe if we know the truth about each other, we can figure out how to move forward." Mary wasn't sure what to say. She felt hollow, as though something essential inside her had just been ripped out. The future she had imagined seemed unreal. What kind of life would she lead, married to a man who had no scruples about lying, cheating, and using her? Before leaving, Victoria passed Mary a small USB drive. There's information on here, emails, voice recordings, some texts. Jack sent me that show he's plotting something bigger. Financial deals, property transfers in both our names, but done without our knowledge. I've hired a lawyer to comb through it. I thought you'd want to know." With that, Victoria left, her footsteps echoing through the lounge. Mary stared at the USB drive in her palm, her mind awash with dread. She gathered her belongings and drifted out of the plaza like a ghost, passers-by oblivious to the emotional avalanche crushing her soul. Mary's penthouse felt colder than usual that evening. She left the lights off, letting the city's neon glow filter through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sitting on the edge of the plush sofa, she plugged the USB drive into her laptop and opened the files. What she saw made her blood run cold. Dozens of emails from Jack to Victoria detailing his plans to expand Thompson Enterprises internationally and use his marital ties to Mary to secure favorable partnerships specifically with companies linked to her father's network. There were spreadsheets referencing offshore accounts and hidden transactions. There was also digital correspondence suggesting Jack was orchestrating a scheme that involved transferring assets under Mary's name without her knowledge. Then came the voice recordings. Jack's familiar baritone confirmed her worst fears. He had admitted to Victoria that he had no intention of honoring his wedding vows. The marriage was purely strategic, and so was the relationship with Victoria. The final nail in the coffin was a series of texts where Jack casually wrote, "Mary is sweet, but gullible. She'll never suspect a thing. Not until it's too late." A wave of nausea gripped Mary. She ran to the bathroom and retched into the toilet, tears mixing with cold sweat. Betrayal burned like acid in her veins. When she managed to stand again, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed. She pressed a hand against her abdomen, feeling the flutter of new life. She wasn't just fighting for her own future anymore, she was fighting for her child's safety. Hours later, Jack returned from work, stepping into the silent living room. Mary stood near the window, arms crossed. He flicked on the lights, his expression shifting to guarded concern when he saw her. "You're still up," she nodded, her eyes locked on him. "I have something to show you." Jack stiffened as she opened the laptop and played one of the recordings. The living room filled with the sound of his voice, dripping with contempt and cunning. Jack's face went ashen. "Mary, I can explain." She slammed the laptop shut, tears threatening to erupt. "Explain what? That you've been lying to me? That you used me for some business deal? That you never loved me?" He approached cautiously, hands raised in a placating gesture. "It's not that simple. Yes, I've been making some deals. But I always intended to provide for you." Mary cut him off, voice trembling with anger. "Providing for me? How generous! You think you can buy my dignity with your money?" Jack's eyes flickered, anger seeping into his gaze. "You're my wife. You knew how ambitious I was from the start. This is business, Mary. Why do you think people marry into powerful families? Love is just one aspect. You were never naive. Don't twist this," she cried. "You lied, you cheated, and you manipulated me. There's nothing complicated about that. You took a vow." His expression hardened, revealing the coldness behind his polished exterior. "A vow you were only too happy to accept. You wanted the lifestyle, the security. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim." A wave of shock coursed through her, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "I'm pregnant, Jack. You're about to be a father." He seemed to reel at her words, eyes darting away before focusing again. "I know," he said quietly, "and I intend to take care of the child. Whatever's going on between us doesn't change that." Mary's eyes widened. "You don't get it. I don't want your money. I wanted a husband who loves me. I wanted a father for my child who'd put family above power. But you're so twisted up in your own schemes that you can't even see what you're throwing away." The confrontation stretched on, both of them shouting accusations until the early morning hours. By dawn, Mary felt emotionally eviscerated, a hollow shell of herself. Jack refused to apologize, refused to show remorse. He insisted everything he did was for their future, but the half-truth spilled from his mouth like a broken faucet. Mary finally retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door. She pressed her back against it, tears streaming. Jack pounded on the other side for a while, but she ignored him. Eventually, he left her alone, and she listened to the sound of his retreating footsteps, uncertain of whether she felt relief or a deeper sense of despair. This was the man she had married. This was the father of her unborn child, and there was no escaping his shadow, not in the eyes of the law or the court of public opinion. Over the following weeks, the tension between Mary and Jack reached a boiling point. Word got out, though Mary wasn't sure, how that trouble brewed in the Thompson household. She suspected Victoria, spurned by Jack's false promises, had shared the damning details with select journalists. Soon, the tabloids began running salacious headlines hinting at a scandal within the Thompson empire, though none had concrete proof yet. The paparazzi hovered outside their penthouse, hoping for a dramatic scoop. Mary found solace in only one place, her parents' modest home in Florida. She flew down there, without telling Jack, seeking refuge from the media circus and the oppressive atmosphere of the penthouse. Her mother greeted her at the door with open arms and tear-filled eyes. Her father's expression was grave, and she realized that they had seen the headlines too. In the warm comfort of her childhood bedroom, Mary finally let out the sobs she had been holding in. Nancy Johnson stroked her daughter's hair, whispering reassurances. Harold, quiet yet resolute, told her that no amount of money was worth her happiness. "Do you want a divorce?" he asked, voice thick with concern. Mary stared at her hands, the weight of her ring feeling more suffocating than ever. "Maybe," she whispered, "but I'm scared of what Jack will do. He's well-connected, powerful, and there's the baby. I don't want a vicious custody battle." Harold sighed. "You'll have our support, whatever you decide." The days in Florida offered Mary fleeting peace. She walked along the beach, letting the salt-laced breeze clear her mind. She felt the baby's gentle kicks, reminding her of her new priority. But in quiet moments, dread resurfaced. Jack hadn't tried to contact her, which was ominous. He was the type of man who never let anything out of his control for long. When Mary finally returned to New York, she found a surprise waiting. The penthouse was pristine, decked out with fresh flowers and a faint scent of newly polished furniture. Jack stood in the foyer, offering a strained smile. "I realize I messed up," he said, his tone quieter than usual. "I want to make this right." Mary eyed him warily. "And how do you plan to do that?" Jack approached slowly, placing a hand on her arm. "I thought a second wedding might help us start fresh, a vow renewal, if you will. Something more intimate. No paparazzi, just close friends and family." Her heart lurched. Was he serious? After all he had done, he wanted to put on some charade of renewed vows. The suggestion felt bizarre, even offensive. But something about his controlled demeanor set off alarm bells in her head. It was as though he were laying a trap, and she couldn't see the bait clearly yet. Still, Mary was tired of the constant tension, the cold silences, and sleepless nights. "Fine," she said at last, "but on my terms. A small ceremony in a place I choose, with my officiant." Jack agreed readily, his eyes sparking with what looked like triumph. "Whatever you want," he said, stepping forward to hug her. Mary tensed in his embrace, the warmth of his body clashing with the memory of all his betrayals. Over the next few weeks, Mary planned the vow renewal, though calling it that made her nauseous. She chose a small, historical church in Manhattan's Upper West Side. She deliberately kept the guest list, limited her parents, Charlotte, a few relatives from Jack's side, and, inevitably, some of his business associates he insisted on inviting. A hush fell over the city when word got out that the Thompsons were renewing their vows so soon after their lavish wedding. The tabloids buzzed with speculation, but no official press invitations were issued. Despite the personal turmoil, Mary felt a flicker of resolve. She spent hours each night going through the USB drive, piecing together Jack's financial dealings. She consulted a lawyer, a stoic woman named Cassandra Keyes, who specialized in high-profile divorces. Cassandra warned Mary that Jack was likely preparing for a legal battle of some kind. "If you want to leave him, you need leverage," Cassandra said, scanning the digital evidence. "This is good. We can prove fraud, conspiracy, maybe even money laundering if these accounts aren't legit. You might walk away with full custody and a sizable settlement enough to protect yourself and your child." But Mary wanted more than money. She wanted accountability, a real public reckoning for everything Jack had done. And so she made a decision. If Jack insisted on having another ceremony, another farce, she would use it to her advantage. She would deliver the final blow in the place he least expected, right in front of the people he wanted to impress the most. On the eve of the vow renewal, Mary stood in front of the mirror, cradling her slightly swollen belly. She could feel the tension in the air, a crackling energy that signaled something monumental was about to happen. She was done being a pawn in Jack's game. The next day, she would step into that church as a woman with a plan, prepared to reveal the truth. No matter the cost, the morning of the vow renewal felt eerily similar to her first wedding day. Mary donned a pale blue dress, simpler than the lavish gown she had worn before, and tried to steady her hands as Charlotte helped fasten the zip. The pregnancy was more noticeable now, giving her a gentle curve. She pressed a hand to her belly, silently promising her child that she would fight to protect them. Jack, dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, looked every inch the powerful entrepreneur as they arrived separately at the church's entrance. He greeted his select group of guests, turning on his charismatic smile for each handshake. Mary caught a glimpse of his face from afar. It was set in that confident mask she knew too well. A part of her still felt a pang. Why couldn't he have loved her? Why couldn't their marriage have been real? Inside the church, soft light filtered through stained glass windows, depicting scenes of hope and redemption. The small congregation murmured amongst themselves as they took their seats. Mary noticed Victoria, seated inconspicuously in the back row. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and Mary felt a wave of unexpected solidarity. Today was the day Jack's carefully woven tapestry of lies would unravel. The officiant, an elderly bishop named Father James Henry, an old acquaintance of Mary's family, approached the altar. Mary had chosen him because he was known for his empathy and unwavering moral stance. Jack eyed the bishop with mild suspicion, but said nothing. Father Henry cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the renewal of vows between Jack Thompson and Mary Johnson. Thompson, who wished to reaffirm the promises they made before God and their loved ones." Mary swallowed hard, adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was her moment. She glanced around the church. Her parents sat in the front row, anxiety etched into their faces. Jack's business associates were peppered among the pews, including a couple of stern-looking lawyers. And there, near the back, were Charlotte and Victoria, both looking as if they were waiting for a storm to break. Jack was the first to speak, reciting his vow with perfect composure. "Mary, you are my wife, my partner in all things. I stand here to promise again that I will cherish you, protect you, and build a life with you founded on trust and mutual respect." Mary forced herself not to recoil. The hypocrisy of his words stung, but she kept her expression calm. When it was her turn, she took a shaky breath and held Jack's gaze. "Jack," she began, voice carrying the weight of her simmering emotions, "today, in this sacred place, I want to speak openly. I want to remind you and everyone present what a vow truly means. A vow is a promise of loyalty, honesty, and above all, love without conditions or deceit. A ripple of unease seemed to pass through the crowd. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly, a silent warning, as if pleading with her not to stray from the script. Mary continued, "I stand here pregnant with our child, who deserves parents that embody these values. Parents who uphold each other with honesty and faithfulness, not subterfuge and manipulation." Father Henry shifted, sensing the tension. Murmurs spread through the pews. Jack's posture stiffened, and a thin film of perspiration glistened on his brow. She reached into a small envelope tucked into her dress and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Before we proceed, I feel compelled to share something with you all, some records that show Jack has strayed from these vows he supposedly wants to reaffirm. In fact, he's done more than stray. He's made me and other women pawns in his game of power." A collective gasp erupted from the audience. Jack's eyes flared with anger and panic. He lurched forward, trying to snatch the paper from Mary's hand, but she sidestepped him smoothly. The tension escalated. From the back of the church, Victoria stood. "She's telling the truth," Victoria called out, voice echoing against the high ceiling. "Jack Thompson promised me a future too. He took advantage of both of us." A chaos of voices broke out. Some guests stood in shock, while others hurried to hush Victoria. The bishop repeatedly called for calm. Mary's father rose, protective rage shining in his eyes. Jack, clearly cornered, struggled to maintain composure. "This is slander," he shouted, though his voice wavered. "You have no idea what you're doing, Mary." But Mary's resolve had never been stronger. She held up the paper for the crowd to see. Though it was largely symbolic, she had the real evidence backed up and ready to reveal to the press if needed. "I have emails, texts, and voice recordings proving Jack's infidelity and financial schemes. I won't be his scapegoat or his silent partner any longer." A stunned silence descended. Tears glistened on Mary's cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "I came here thinking I might still love you, Jack, but now I realize this marriage was built on lies. These vows mean nothing if they come from a deceitful heart." Suddenly the church doors swung open. Two uniformed officers stepped in, accompanied by Cassandra Keyes. Mary's lawyer had advised her to file a formal complaint for fraud and to contact the authorities regarding the questionable financial transactions. The plan had been set in motion long before this day. Jack's face turned pale as the officers approached him, quietly asking him to come in for questioning regarding alleged financial misconduct. Guests gasped. Jack's lawyers leaped into action, protesting, but it was too late. The net had been cast. The entire church was in an uproar. Cameras flashed. Someone had apparently tipped off local reporters, or maybe they'd just caught wind of a scene unraveling at the old church. Mary watched as Jack was escorted away, his once impeccable composure shattered. He glared at her over his shoulder, hatred burning in his eyes. In the midst of the clamour, Mary felt a wave of relief, as though a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from her chest. Tears streamed down her face, but a small smile curved her lips. The vow renewal was a ruse one she orchestrated to corner Jack where he could no longer hide. And while her heart still ached, she knew she'd done the right thing. She had protected herself, her child, and even Victoria from further deception. By the time the doors swung shut behind Jack and the officers, the hush in the church was palpable. Father Henry, stunned, whispered a quiet prayer. Family, friends, and onlookers alike seemed unsure whether to leave or offer comfort. Mary turned to her parents. They embraced her, tears in their eyes. Over her father's shoulder, she met Charlotte's gaze. Charlotte gave her a nod of encouragement, and Victoria, standing near the back, mouthed a silent thank you. Their church ceremony was over, but the fallout was just beginning. The next few hours blurred into frantic phone calls, camera flashes, and hushed conversations in corners. Mary, drained by the emotional roller coaster, allowed her parents to guide her out of the church. Cassandra Keyes stayed behind to manage the immediate legal scramble, speaking with Jack's lawyers and the officers who had taken him into custody for questioning. Despite the pandemonium outside, Mary felt a strange calm settling over her. The grey sky above threatened rain, a fitting backdrop for the storm that had just erupted. She clutched her belly, focusing on the tiny heartbeat within, reminding herself why she had to be strong. Paparazzi, alerted by the spectacle, swarmed the church steps, shouting questions at her. "Miss S. Thompson, is your marriage over? Were you aware of your husband's affair? Is it true Jack Thompson has been arrested for fraud?" Mary said nothing. With a protective shield formed by Harold and Nancy Johnson, and Charlotte at her side, she moved through the throng and disappeared into a waiting car. Once they were safe inside the vehicle, Charlotte gave Mary a worried look. "You were so brave in there. Are you sure you're okay?" Mary leaned her head back against the seat. "I don't know. I just know I had to do it." They drove to a small boutique hotel on the outskirts of Manhattan, away from the media frenzy near the Thompson penthouse. With the help of Cassandra, Mary had booked the suite under a different name to avoid detection. Once inside the room, Mary practically collapsed onto the bed. The emotional weight of her decision bore down on her, leaving her trembling and tearful. Her mother rubbed her back. "We're proud of you, sweetheart. No one deserves to be treated the way Jack treated you." Her father, always a man of few words, added, "You did the right thing." Mary attempted a smile. "I just couldn't live with that lie anymore," she whispered. "Not when I have a child to think of." In the following days, the news of Jack Thompson's arrest spread like wildfire. Though he was bailed out within hours, the damage to his reputation was immediate and severe. Headlines splashed across local and national outlets. Millionaire mogul accused of fraud, secret vow renewal becomes showdown, and pregnant wife exposes. Jack Thompson's double life. Law enforcement froze several of Jack's business accounts, pending investigation. Investors panicked, and Thompson Enterprises' stock value plummeted. For a man obsessed with control and public image, it was the ultimate downfall. In a desperate attempt at damage control, Jack's high-powered legal team began spinning stories. Claiming Mary had fabricated evidence out of jealousy, they threatened to sue Mary for defamation. But Mary had her own arsenal, the USB drive, verified by forensic experts. Cassandra Keyes calmly refuted every smear attempt, providing partial disclosures to the press that strongly suggested Jack's guilt. Victoria Snow also came forward with her own set of records, further corroborating Mary's claims. The media feasted on every twist and turn, painting Jack as a cunning manipulator who preyed on vulnerable women for personal gain. Amid the legal chaos, Mary struggled with her own sense of heartbreak. She was filing for divorce, but a part of her still grieved for the dream she once believed in. She had loved Jack, truly loved him. Now she had to reconcile that emotion with the cold-blooded reality of who he truly was. Victoria reached out, inviting Mary to coffee at a discreet cafe away from the paparazzi-laden streets. Mary agreed, curious about the woman who had once been her rival. When they met, Victoria looked exhausted, yet more at peace. "You did it," Victoria said, admiration in her voice. "I never thought he'd be held accountable for all the lies he told us." Mary shrugged, sipping a decaf latte. "I just did what I had to do. Now I'm worried about the future. Will he fight for custody of the baby out of spite? Will he try to ruin me financially?" Victoria set her cup down. Jack is cornered. Most of his business allies are jumping ship, and from what I hear, the state might press serious charges if the investigation proves he laundered money. He'll have bigger worries than fighting you in family court. The thought provided a shred of comfort. Still, Mary knew Jack was not the type of man to go down without a fight. As if reading her mind, Victoria reached across the table to gently squeeze her hand. "You have to stay strong," she said, genuine concern in her eyes. "If I can help with anything, I will. I'm not proud of my role in all this, but I see now I was just another pawn in his game. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you." Mary felt the sting of tears. "I appreciate that. This hasn't been easy for any of us." They parted with a hesitant embrace, a silent understanding that they'd both been victims and survivors of Jack Thompson's grand manipulations. By the end of the week, Mary found her spirits lifting, if only slightly. She had a clear path now: finalize the divorce, ensure her baby's future was secure, and reclaim her life from the ashes of betrayal. She decided to stay in New York, at least until the legal proceedings ended. After that, she wasn't sure. Perhaps she would move to Florida to be closer to her parents, or maybe find a quieter suburban life to raise her child. For the first time in months, her decisions were hers alone. One evening, Mary sat in the small hotel suite, gazing out the window at the glimmering city skyline. The phone rang. It was Cassandra. "You're going to want to turn on Channel 7, she said. "Right now." Mary fumbled for the remote, switching on the TV. The anchor reported a breaking story. Jack Thompson was spotted entering a courthouse, flanked by his legal team, facing new charges related to financial malfeasance. Footage showed him pushing past reporters, grim-faced and silent. Relief mingled with sorrow in Mary's heart. This was happening. Justice was finally catching up with Jack Thompson. She turned the TV off and exhaled. The bombshell she had dropped in that church was no longer just an act of defiance, it was a turning point. She allowed herself a small, trembling smile. For once, the future felt a little less terrifying. As Jack's legal woes escalated, so did the media frenzy. Journalists camped outside the courthouse, speculating about every new development in the case. Anonymous sources leaked more documents tying Jack to shady offshore accounts, lending weight to Mary and Victoria's allegations. Tabloid headlines declared the pregnant wife who brought down a millionaire, while more reputable news outlets ran in-depth segments on the case's implications for corporate ethics. Mary tried to keep her head down, focusing on her health and the well-being of her unborn child. She attended prenatal appointments with a new obstetrician, Dr. Carl Whitman, at Mount Sinai Hospital. During each visit, she felt a sense of resolve. For too long, she had allowed Jack's decisions to dictate her life. Now, she was making choices rooted in self-preservation and love for her growing baby. Then came a court date that would decide whether Jack would remain free on bail or be held pending trial. His attorneys had been scrambling to discredit Mary, but the judge seemed unimpressed by their tactics. Cassandra accompanied Mary to the hearing, offering a supportive arm as they walked into the courtroom. Despite everything, Mary's heart pounded painfully in her chest at the sight of Jack sitting at the defense table, impeccably dressed, yet visibly tense. He glanced at Mary, his once familiar eyes now filled with a strange mix of anger and desperation. For a moment, she wondered if he felt any guilt at all for betraying her. But the thought passed quickly. She had seen enough to know Jack's remorse was about self-preservation, not genuine regret. In a brief but decisive ruling, the judge tightened Jack's bail conditions, citing the strong evidence of fraudulent activity. Jack's face tightened. His lawyers huddled around him in hushed conversation. Although he avoided immediate detention, it was clear the walls were closing in. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Cassandra advised Mary not to speak, so they pushed through the throng, cameras clicking madly. Someone shoved a microphone into Mary's face, asking, "How do you feel about your husband's legal troubles?" She swallowed back a surge of emotion, ignoring the question as she slipped into a waiting car. In the days following that hearing, Jack made a single attempt to contact Mary directly. He left a voicemail, a far cry from his earlier bravado, pleading with her to remember the good times and consider the future of their child. His tone suggested he wanted to negotiate privately, perhaps to keep some aspects of the case out of the public eye. Mary deleted the message without responding. She had already started the divorce process and had no intention of letting him manipulate her again. Meanwhile, Mary's father quietly looked into the money Jack had siphoned through her name. He enlisted the help of an old friend, a retired financial investigator. Bit by bit, they uncovered the labyrinth of shell companies and secret funds Jack had set up. Each discovery strengthened Mary's legal position. It also deepened her anger. Jack had not only betrayed her heart, but also tried to entangle her in potential criminal charges. One afternoon, Mary and Cassandra sat in a law office, finalizing the divorce papers. Mary's stomach fluttered anxiously. This wasn't how she expected her story to go. She had dreamed of a lifetime with Jack, raising a family together. Yet here she was, signing documents that severed their legal bond. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she wiped them away, determined to stay strong. Cassandra placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This is the start of your new life," she said softly. "You're breaking free from a toxic marriage. You should be proud of yourself." Mary nodded. "I'll try to remember that." Once the paperwork was filed, Mary steeled herself for the next battle, ensuring full custody of her child. She refused to let Jack spin fatherhood into another one of his power plays. With Cassandra's guidance, she was confident she had enough evidence to protect herself if Jack attempted a custody dispute out of spite. As weeks turned into months, the media coverage shifted focus. More pressing national news overshadowed Jack's scandal. Though local outlets occasionally featured updates on his upcoming trial, the world at large seemed to move on. For Mary, that was a blessing. She craved the anonymity of a normal life, away from the glare of public scrutiny. She decided to sell Jack's penthouse, an asset she had legally gained partial ownership of. The place held too many haunting memories of a man she thought she knew. Using the proceeds, she purchased a quiet, modest home near her parents in Florida, though she would maintain a small apartment in Manhattan for her legal obligations. Her heart was set on a fresh start. She wanted her child to grow up with a sense of belonging and family warmth, not in the sterile corridors of high society. The final hearing for Jack's case approached. Word was that the prosecution had secured damning witness testimonies from disgruntled employees and associates who refused to be scapegoated. Mary had provided her own statement, recounting Jack's manipulations and presenting her trove of evidence. Victoria Snow also cooperated fully. The court date loomed like a dark cloud on the horizon, but Mary knew it would be the last major battle. One way or another, justice would be served. In a bittersweet moment, Mary realized she felt pity for Jack. He was a deeply flawed man, driven by ambition so intense it had hollowed out his humanity. Yet, as much as she pitied him, she would never forgive him for what he did. Not fully. He had shattered her trust, robbed her of illusions, and nearly jeopardized her future. But in the end, he had also unwittingly given her something precious, the strength to stand alone, to fight back, and to protect the life growing inside her at all costs. 6 months later, Mary cradled a newborn baby girl, Lila Grace, in her arms. Holding her daughter, she felt an overwhelming sense of wonder, knowing all the heartbreak had led to this fragile, beautiful life. She had delivered Lila in a quiet Florida hospital, away from New York's relentless spotlight. Her parents stood by, beaming as they welcomed their first grandchild, and Mary felt a profound relief in their steady presence. Meanwhile, Jack's legal battle had reached its climax. Not long after Lila's birth, a jury found him guilty of multiple fraud charges. He was spared on a few lesser counts, but the conviction meant prison was almost inevitable. From her hospital bed, Mary read a terse text from Cassandra, confirming the verdict. She felt a flicker of regret. For the man, Jack might have been but more than anything. She felt relief. His downfall was the natural consequence of his calculated deceptions. Over the following weeks, Mary tried to settle into life as a single mother. She bought a modest home near her parents' neighborhood, planting a small magnolia tree in the backyard to mark Lila's arrival. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the baby's bassinet and reminding Mary of how different her life had become since exposing Jack at the altar. That dramatic moment of truth had catapulted her into chaos, yet it also set her free. Jack reached out only once after the conviction. His voicemail apologized grudgingly for pushing things too far, then segued into hollow talk of fixing their relationship. Mary deleted it. She knew he was simply maneuvering for leverage before his sentencing. The thought that he might fight for custody, despite his crimes, twisted her stomach, but Cassandra assured her that Jack's case was weak. Evidence of his schemes was stacked too high for any judge to grant him significant parental rights. Victoria Snow also contacted Mary to offer congratulations on Lila's birth. Though they had once been rivals, they now shared a quiet respect forged by surviving Jack's manipulations. Victoria had rebuilt her fashion label in another state, far from the PR scandals that once plagued her. She and Mary exchanged occasional messages, never close friends, but tied by a strange solidarity few others could understand. On a balmy evening, Mary's father set up a small barbecue in her backyard. The family gathered for a simple dinner, passing Lila around as she cooed and gurgled. Gazing at her parents and listening to the rustle of magnolia leaves, Mary felt genuine peace. After so much turmoil, the fake vow renewal, the public arrest, the bruising legal battle, she was finally free to envision a future defined by love and honesty instead of betrayal and secrets. Still, she couldn't completely banish the past from her mind. Now and then, she remembered her wedding day, how she'd walked down a grand aisle, brimming with naive hope. She recalled the look on Jack's face when he was escorted out of the church, his mask of composure shattered. Sometimes it hurt to remember, but it also reminded her how far she had come. In the end, Mary realized that justice does not always arrive in a neat package, nor does healing happen overnight. Yet, she had reclaimed her life, protecting her daughter from the toxic cycle Jack once controlled. As Lila drifted off to sleep, Mary whispered a promise. She would raise her child to know the strength of truth, the necessity of courage, and the unbreakable power of a mother's love. And that, dear viewers, is how a pregnant wife turned a millionaire's grand wedding plan into his very public downfall, all while protecting her unborn child and reclaiming her life. From the hushed whispers in society pages to the thunderous echoes in a Manhattan church, Mary's journey is a powerful reminder that no amount of wealth or influence can stand against truth and courage. She confronted betrayal head-on, orchestrating a bombshell moment that exposed Jack's lies for the world to see. In the end, she emerged with her dignity, her baby's future secure, and a new, authentic sense of hope. If you found this story thrilling, inspiring, or heart-wrenching, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us bring you more gripping real-life drama and fiction. Join our community, and let's keep these tales of courage, resilience, and redemption alive. Until next time.